How's it going, folks? This is Wolf. Today I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a little tier list of all the horror movies I watched in October this year, since, well, frankly, I watched a lot of them and I have a lot to say about them. And I'd rather do this than a full on review because, as we all know, doing reviews of movies on YouTube will get you absolutely nuked by copyright if you put even 3 seconds of footage in your video. So, this is a fun way to kind of do a bunch of mini reviews on all these movies that I saw without, having my entire channel completely wiped off the face of the earth. Yeah. So, yada yada, just my opinion, etc. You all get the idea. You've seen tier list videos before. All right, so the first horror movie I watched in October here was Skinamarink. And I'm not leaving this in C tier. This is just temporary. I saw somebody do this. They put like the things they were about to rank in C tier as kind of like a placeholder so that they could talk about them and then rank them. I don't know. I just thought that worked pretty well. So I'm going to copy whoever's idea that was. But yeah, so just because something is in C tier doesn't mean it's going to stay there. I'm just talking about it currently. So yeah, anyway, Skinamarink. There's a lot to say about this movie. I have a lot to say about this movie. This is a very, very lengthy discussion right out the gate, I would imagine. Since this is just such a bizarre movie. It's so unique. I mean, I don't really think there's too many other movies like it. It is very much just its own thing. If you're in the horror community at all, you've probably heard of this. It got really, really popular. I think some clips got put on TikTok or some shit, and yeah, people were just absolutely foaming at the mouth to watch this movie because funny liminal space and, you know, things like that. I have a bit of a mixed track record when it comes to I suppose enjoying things that TikTok recommends. I don't like TikTok personally. I'm not on TikTok. I don't enjoy it. It's just not for me. Um but yeah, whenever something gets really popular on there, it'll eventually, spread its tendrils to the rest of the internet and I will possibly hear about it, especially if it's a horror thing. I'll usually end up hearing about it through the grapevine somehow or other. But anyway, yeah, I heard of Skinamarink and I wasn't really sure if it was something I was going to watch or not. And then I saw a couple clips of it and I was like, yeah, it looks all right. I like liminal spaces and stuff like that trend of like, the back rooms and all that. Just the concept of liminality is really, really cool to me. I think those images kind of connect with something in me. And I also enjoy analog horror when it's done right. Big asterisk on that. It's got to be done right. And I've certainly seen some really good analog horror and some less than stellar analog horror, shall we say. I'd say the accessibility of it is kind of both a blessing and a curse to some degree, since, I mean, pretty much anyone can make analog horror. Obviously, the best analog horror series are going to have interesting things happening, more of a production value, but I could just sit here in my chair and make an analog horror video if I wanted to. Which, like I said, blessing and a curse, because the accessibility means that people who enjoy the style can just, make it. And also that means that there's a bit of oversaturation, especially now, of just like people just kind of making analog horror. But like, I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing that. I think it's great how accessible it is. It's just that, with that, you're going to get a lot of rather subpar first attempts. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that's just kind of how it is. But how that relates to Skinamarink is that this is very much connected to that whole analog horror trend. I believe the director of this actually has a YouTube channel where he posts/posted analog horror videos, and one of the videos he posted was kind of the precursor to Skinamarink. So this is a very low budget movie. I believe it was just like $20,000 or something. I don't know. I'll put it up on screen. You can see. But anyway, very, very, very low budget. So the fact that this was in theaters and made so much money is really remarkable. But that doesn't really tell you anything about the movie. What did I think about the movie? I thought it was fucking terrifying, and I didn't think I would. When I when I first saw it, I mean, like, analog horror can get me when it's done right, but it doesn't get me often, you know? And I've watched so many horror movies that it's very, very rare for me to get like actually legitimately like really uncomfortable when I'm watching a movie, but Skinamarink really, really did that for me. It just connected with me. And I've been saying this to everyone that I'm talking to about this movie. It will not do it for everyone. There's a pretty good chance that if you see Skinamarink, it will not have any effect on you at all. It's like if it connects with you, you're going to find it absolutely terrifying, but if it doesn't, you're just going to be bored out of your mind. And that's kind of where, from my understanding, a lot of the mixed reception of the movie came from, simply because, like, I mean, a lot of people just didn't connect with it. They didn't think it was scary. They thought it was just boring, shots of empty hallways and dark corridors and corners of rooms, which, I mean, yeah, that is pretty much what the movie is, but I don't know. It'll either connect with you or it won't. And for some reason or another, it connected with me, and I still haven't really been able to figure out why exactly, but yeah, it scared me pretty bad. There were a lot of moments where I was like genuinely like cringing back in my chair because I didn't want to look at the screen. Like that never happens. Like I've watched so many of these freaking movies, like that just doesn't happen to me anymore, but it happened here and I was quite pleased with that, That's kind of the experience that I chase as a horror movie fan. So I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was very tense. Uh, I think one of the reasons that it was so tense was just because it really, really goes hard with its jump scares, and there's not that many of them, really. Like, there's barely any at all, actually, and what few jump scares, quote unquote, that there are, they're more auditory than visual, really. But they're very loud. I'm not gonna spoil anything. Obviously, I'll be like trying to avoid spoilers for this whole list generally. But the movie is super quiet for like 99% of it, and then when the jump scare happens, it just blasts your ears, and it's really freaking loud. And I didn't think there were jump scares in this movie, so when the first one hit, it made me jump like 3 feet out of my chair. It was fucking crazy. But yeah, then for the rest of the movie, I just figured that there would be one, but I mean, it just never lets up. I think that's what it is about this movie, is that like, for a standard horror movie, you've got your classic jump scare, right? It's like the building music, pause, moment of relief. Oh, I'm sure nothing's going to happen. Jump scare! That's just how it works. In Skinamarink, it's just nothing but that building feeling, and you just keep thinking like, please, please, just let it jump scare me. I just want it to be over, just so you can be like, you can have that momentary relief. The implication of this movie is by far the most terrifying part. There's one part at the end, or near the end. If you've seen the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about, but it implies something really fucked up and terrifying, and it really got under my skin. It got under my skinamarink, as it were. I understand why some people didn't like it, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty good. I'm gonna put that in a solid A tier. Actually, that was pretty great. All right, next up was Alien. All of the movies on this particular tier list were movies that I haven't seen before, so that I can give you like my first impressions. But I have technically seen Alien before. It's just that it was like, I want to say like 4 years ago or so, somewhere in that range. It was a while ago, and that was before I really got into watching movies. I only like really got into watching movies like a couple of years ago at this point. So I have technically seen Alien before, but this was my first like proper viewing of it. Anyway, I mean, I don't even need to do that C tier into whatever thing. We all know it's S tier. It's just a damn good movie. I mean, the art, the atmosphere, the design of everything, just the visuals were absolutely stunning. It's freaking Alien, man. What do you want? It's a great movie. Everybody's seen it. Everybody knows it's good. If you haven't seen it, then watch it because everybody who always pesters you to watch it is right. It's really freaking good. I more so enjoy fantasy settings than sci-fi settings typically. I have been learning to enjoy sci-fi more recently, but more often than not, I'm more of a fantasy guy. But I mean, hell, man, the freaking environments of Alien just ooh, so good. I absolutely loved this movie. I mean, I could go on, but it's Alien. I don't think I really need to say much about it. It's just a fantastic movie. All right, next up, Saw. Oh baby. Thing is about Saw, I was first exposed to this series when I was relatively new to horror, cuz I am not one of those horror fans that like grew up enjoying horror. I hated horror when I was a kid. Like I couldn't stand it. I didn't understand why people would ever want to be scared. It just didn't seem right to me. Uh and I hated the feelings of watching these movies. I hated the feelings of being jump scared and everything. So it took me a while. I eventually came around to it, and now like horror is one of my favorite genres of like anything, if not my absolute favorite. But like I said, it took me a while to to come around to it, and yeah, I was exposed to Saw pretty early on when I was still getting into horror, and that was definitely not a good idea. I saw some clips of, I don't know, Saw 3, I want to say, and they freaked me out pretty bad. I mean, obviously the Saw movies are pretty cheesy, but with how gory some of those traps are in this series, it definitely fucked me up pretty bad when I first saw that. So that kind of dissuaded me from watching it for a while, but now that I've seen a ton of different horror movies and a ton of other movies that are way scarier than Saw, and I'm fine with that. Like then I started looking at the movies and I was like, oh well, now this is kind of like boring. I kind of missed the sweet spot for this series, I think. But yeah, I decided to give it a try here. I watched the first movie. I haven't seen any of the sequels yet, but I will eventually get to those. This was fine. I think Saw is very fine in my opinion. It was a lot less gory than a lot of the sequels. I know that much. I haven't seen the other Saw movies, but I know a fair amount about them. Um, and I also know that like the first one is pretty tame, and then the rest of them get like excessively gory because it kind of turned into being more about the traps, from my understanding. I guess we'll see how that goes when I watch the rest of the movies. But anyway, yeah, this was more of a crime thriller than a horror movie, really. But I mean, it's horror enough, horror adjacent at least. Some would call this the Poor Man's Seven, and they'd pretty much be right. It's very similar, but just it's a similar concept to Seven, but just kind of worse in every way. And I don't necessarily say that as like a dig to Saw, because Seven is just a fucking incredible movie. Like, I mean, you can't really go wrong with Seven. But yeah, Saw is it's all right. It's all right. The mystery element was pretty fun. The traps were relatively interesting. Yeah, that whole thing that they tried to preach about, like, oh, Jigsaw. See, the thing is about Jigsaw is like he's not actually a killer. Like his victims kill themselves. It's like, nah, that's some bullshit, dude. What the fuck are you talking about? That was a really weird angle. I have no idea where they were going with that. But yeah, and the final twist was also a little odd, but it was cool at the same time. I don't know. I mean, this was a relatively low budget movie from my understanding, so I don't know. I'm willing to cut it a little bit of slack, and I had fun watching it. Some friends of mine had seen this movie around the same time that I watched it, and they talked to me about it, and they were like, "Yo, this movie was fucking stupid." So I went into it with somewhat low expectations, but I think I enjoyed it more than they did. I would put this in like a B tier. It was fun. It wasn't great, but it was fun. It's above C tier. C tier is like an average for me, you know. C tier is average. B is like it's good. It's fun. I had fun with it. Next up, we got Hell House LLC, which is a found footage haunted house movie, I guess, is like the best way to describe that, but a very literal type of haunted house movie in that it's like one of those shitty haunted houses that you go to in October and people run around in clown costumes and that kind of shit. Only it might be a little bit more haunted than they actually expected it to be, or whatever. That's kind of that's the premise of it generally. And this movie, I don't think there's really a lot to say about Hell House. It's good. It's a fun found footage movie to watch around Halloween. There's, that's pretty much it. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I know this is like the entire point of the video to make a whole like mini review of all these different movies, but Hell House is a very standard found footage movie, really. Yeah. It exists. It's pretty good. Next up is a movie that I definitely have something to say about, Mandy, which I'd heard a few people talk about this movie, and I wasn't really sure what to think about it because everyone just said like, yeah, this is an interesting movie. It's like it's a Nicolas Cage movie, and it feels like you're on acid during it. And admittedly, that wasn't quite enough to sell me for quite a while, but I don't know. Eventually, for some reason, I was just like, all right, fuck it. I'll watch it, I guess. And I'm really glad I did because this movie is fucking crazy. I have no idea. Like, still, after all this time has passed, almost a month at this point. Actually, it might have been about a month at this point. I still have no idea what the fuck this movie was, but it was certainly entertaining. I've never seen any other movie like it, that's for sure. Not that I can think of anyway. Yeah. It's a Nicolas Cage movie and it's an acid trip. That is a very apt description in retrospect. One thing I really enjoy about Mandy is how beautiful it is. Like, it's a stunning movie. The lighting and the like setting being in the middle of a forest is just like, I can't even describe how beautiful some of these shots are. They really, really did just an amazing job making this movie just gorgeous to look at. And all the performances are great. I don't think I've really seen that much with Nicolas Cage before, but I mean, he did great in this movie, I can tell you that much. His character was pretty interesting. It's not a movie that makes the most sense exactly, but that's okay since that's not really the point of it, I think. It's kind of a revenge story and kind of just whatever the fuck. I don't know. I don't know. This is definitely one where like no matter how I describe it, you just have to watch it, you know? You'd have to be there. You had to have been there. That it's one of those kinds of movies. You tell people like, you just have to be there. And I would recommend that you eventually go there because it is just a really bizarre and interesting movie. And I also very much liked the cult aspect of it. That was pretty creepy, being a pretty clear play on the Manson family and all that. But yeah, I think A tier is accurate. I really enjoyed it. It left a big impression on me, and that's I think one of the things that I look for most in a movie like this. Next up, we got VHS 85. I love the VHS movies. I've seen all of them. They're all great. Maybe not Viral. Viral is not the best, but the rest of them are really good. Or at least in my opinion, they're really good. They're fun anyway. I very much enjoy watching them. I was looking forward to this for a long time. I didn't even know it had released until I saw somebody talk about it, and then I was like, well, shit, I guess I gotta go watch that. For those of you who don't know, the VHS movies are found footage horror anthologies, which don't really have much of a connection to each other. And like they're a series, but they don't have any connection to each other. At least not yet. I doubt they ever will. But it's pretty much just 4 or 5 horror shorts in the found footage style. And recently, they've been doing this sort of year specific thing where they, I mean, this one is 85, so all the movies or all the shorts are in the style of something from 1985. I really, really liked almost all the shorts in this one. There was one that I found to be kind of boring, personally, but all the rest of them were really, really fun. The connecting short that connects all of the other shorts together, which is kind of how all of these movies work, was pretty good. It got the job done. The first short, No Wake, really good. And so was the other short, which was directed by the same person later on, called Ambrosia. Those were really, really fantastic. I loved those quite a bit. God of Death was good, but I felt like I had seen something else very similar in another VHS movie. I don't really know if I have, because I've seen a lot of VHS shorts at this point, but I'll have to go back and check for that again. Wasn't a huge fan of Techno God. That was the one I mentioned earlier that I wasn't really that big on. Not much happened in it, honestly, and even when things started happening, I didn't find it very scary personally. It wasn't badly made exactly. I just don't think it really did it for me. So, that was definitely my least favorite, but also pretty much the only one I didn't like. And then Dream Kill was another huge highlight for me. I really liked the way they structured that, and it was very eerie. They actually had Hamburger Lady by Throbbing Gristle in that short, which I absolutely fucking marked out when I heard that. That was really crazy because I never expected to hear that in a horror movie. I guess is a horror short, but still, yeah, that was pretty crazy. But that's just a personal thing. Yeah, I really liked this. I'd say honestly, I'm gonna have to put that in another A tier. We're getting a pretty top heavy list here, but I mean, to be fair, I don't typically watch movies that I don't think I'm going to like, so you know, there's that. Right. Next up is Scream. I don't know how the fuck I've never seen this before, but I had to see it eventually. I'd heard people talk about it for quite a long time because, it's one of the more popular horror movies to my knowledge. And yeah, I mean, It was fucking awesome. I don't know what to tell you about it. It was just really good. I liked how it was simultaneously a parody of the slasher genre and also just a good slasher movie. Because when I had heard people say, "Oh yeah, Scream, that's like my favorite slasher parody," I was like, "Oh, all right. Well, I guess it's probably not going to take itself that seriously then." And there were certainly parts in which it didn't, and it very much knew what it was, but it was a very solid slasher on its own. It had very likable characters. Surprisingly, that's not really something that a slasher movie is known for, but the twist at the end, this is going to be very hard to talk about without spoilers, but I'll do my best. The twist at the end was spoiled for me, but only partially. I didn't know who it was, but I knew the other thing. I don't know, man. If you've seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. But anyway, all that to say, this movie got spoiled for me, and I still had a really good time with it, and I was still guessing throughout it because it is as much a mystery film as it is a slasher. If, like me, you're a fan of horror movies and you haven't seen Scream yet, I would definitely recommend giving it a watch. I don't even know why I bother trying to not spoil this because, like, I'm pretty sure anyone who's even remotely interested in this has probably seen it already, but whatever. That's an S tier for me. I really liked that, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest of the Scream series. Speaking of parodies that stand on their own as just horror movies in general, The Cabin in the Woods is another one that is pretty well regarded in the horror community. I liked The Cabin in the Woods quite a bit. Not as much as Scream, I can tell you that. It wasn't really that scary overall. It was more just an interesting story. And the way it was told was pretty funny. I like the office workers and their contributions to the story. I found those to be very funny. Not to mention, this movie is pretty fucking brutal too. Especially the ending is surprisingly quite fucked up. Interestingly, especially when you start thinking about it a little bit more. It was just a fun movie. I didn't like change my life or anything, but it was quite enjoyable. I would put that like right at the top of B tier there. Maybe we should put Hell House in C tier. I think that might be a better spot for it. Hell House might go in C tier for now. Sorry. All right. Next up was 28 Days Later, which is another one of those movies that I really don't know how I managed to avoid seeing for so long, but somehow I did, and I saw it now, and I gotta say, this was really fucking good. I love zombies. I know they got super oversaturated in like the early to mid 2010s, and like everybody was doing zombie stuff and everybody got so fucking tired of it. I never got tired of zombies. I think they're still fun. I still like zombie games and zombie movies and whatever else. It's fun. There's a lot of stories that can be told there, and it's just like it's cool. I don't have to fucking defend myself. I like zombies. Fuck you. Anyway, this is a good ass zombie movie. Probably one of the better ones I've seen. Even though, like, oh no, technically it's not a zombie movie, it's an infection movie. It's a zombie movie. I don't fucking care. I don't know why I'm so defensive when I'm talking about this movie, but it's basically a zombie movie. Uh, Popularized the quote unquote fast zombies. They're not zombies. All right, I'll stop. I really enjoyed the way they shot this movie, actually, with like I don't know exactly how it was done, but it was done using some kind of early digital camera equipment. Not something that was standard at the time. I'm not I'm not a cameraman, dude. I don't fucking know what they did. But the way they shot it makes it look surprisingly realistic, weirdly realistic. It looks like somebody is just straight up recording these events that are happening. It's almost got somewhat of a found footage feel to it, although it definitely is not a found footage movie. But it's got kind of a similar vibe, just with the equipment that they shot it with. It's just neat. I like it. And of course, the story is very good as well. Zombie movies are almost always about the story, considering, like, I mean, what are you really going to do? It's zombies. There's not really like a big bad guy to go and fight. It's just everyone's a fucking zombie. It's always about the characters, but the characters were great. The story was great. It got really fucking crazy at the end. There were a lot of twists and turns. And the note that it ended on was surprising. I'll say that. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it was surprising. It was surprising. I really liked 28 Days Later. It left quite an impression on me. That's an S tier, I think. Yeah. That actually goes like right there. Yeah, I really liked that movie. I want to rewatch it. Oh, another aspect that I forgot to mention. The beginning scenes where the main character, I don't remember his name. It's Cillian Murphy. I don't remember his name. Jim? Is it Jim? It might be Jim. Anyway, Cillian Murphy's walking around London and it's abandoned, and those are pretty simple shots, all things considered, but my God, they did a great job of making that movie just feel desolate and just abandoned. The atmosphere at the beginning of the movie is just mwah, chef's kiss, bro. It's so fucking good. I also watched 28 Weeks Later, which was fine. I don't know, man. That it definitely didn't live up to the original for me. I had heard a lot of people like get into legitimate arguments over like, oh man, which is better, dude? 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, dude? Like for sure, bro. It's totally got to be this. Like that's cool. Like if you like 28 Weeks Later more than the original, like that's fine. I don't think there's any contest personally. 28 Days Later is way fucking better in my opinion. But 28 Weeks Later has its moments for sure. There were a couple pretty shocking scenes in this definitely, but I think overall just the story was kind of less interesting. The characters didn't really pull me in as much. The setting was also kind of less interesting. This isn't really a spoiler since it's right at the beginning of the movie, but like the idea of 28 Weeks Later is that it's after the infection of the original 28 Days and they're like rebuilding London now and the infection is over, and like obviously since it's a sequel to a zombie movie, that doesn't go super well, but like I mean, it takes a surprising amount of time for things to not go super well. And I don't know. There were a couple parts in this movie where I was just straight up bored. But I do think it was a solid offering overall. If it was just on its own, which it couldn't really be, but if it was just on its own, it might jump the ranks a little bit. But as for right now, I'd put that in like a B tier, maybe like a high C. Nah, it had its moments. It can go in like a B tier. It's fine. It's fine. It's an okay movie. Next up, we got The Ring. Or Ring. This is the original Ring, not the American remake by Gore Verbinski, which is interesting. I haven't seen that one. I'd like to, since I hear the people say it's good, but man, it's going to be hard to match this one. I liked this movie a lot. I love Japanese horror, just Asian horror in general. They really know how to do horror right. Just especially Japanese horror movies, man. They got this slow, like sick burn that you feel in your gut when you're watching them. It's just this really interesting atmosphere and vibe that you just don't get anywhere else, and I love it. I'm here for that shit, man. It's real good. I don't know why I don't know why I didn't see it. I'm gonna keep saying that. throughout the rest of this list. I don't know why I hadn't seen it until now, but yeah, I'm glad that I went out of my way to watch this because goddamn. Doesn't really have much in the way of jump scares. It's got maybe a couple, I guess, but it's mostly like super slow burn psychological horror, which I love. It's got a mystery behind it that isn't ever really explained. It's kind of explained. Like you kind of get an idea of what's going on, but you never really figure out exactly what the fuck was happening throughout throughout the movie, which I also like. I don't really like when horror movies explain absolutely everything because that ruins the mystery. It ruins the imagination aspect of it, right? It's like people always say, your imagination will fill in the blanks and that'll be scarier than anything that you can write. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. But yeah, I mean, it kind of gives you some ideas. I will say one aspect of this movie that I didn't care for was they really like exposition. Particularly one character is just obnoxious with how much exposition he gives out. Which that kind of threw me off because it was just like, what the where is this coming from? How do you know all this shit? But he does, whatever. I don't know. It's creepy as hell. That the like curse video that everyone's seen a million times is wonderfully scary. Um yeah, the big spook at the end. Everyone knows what I'm talking about there is real good. Real good. And the twist too. Ooh. This is some solid stuff. That's an A tier for me. Love that movie. Again, I would like to see the American remake, but like, I don't know, man. American remakes of Japanese horror movies, not the best. Not the best, in my opinion. They kind of tend to remove the slow burn psychological aspect and make them more standard. I don't know. But I guess I'll watch it at some point. I'll see what I think. But yeah, for right now, Ring definitely an A tier. That's real solid. In fact, I think could move these around a little bit. Skinamarink isn't above those. Whatever. I'll get to that later. Let's see. Still got a lot to go here. Dang, this video is going to be freaking long. I should hurry it up a little bit. So, we got Terrifier next. This is a movie. Holy fuck. This sure is a movie. Terrifier revels in being Terrifier, I think is the best way to describe this. This movie is unapologetically fucking crazy. It's insanely gory. It has jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. It practically doesn't even have a plot. I mean, technically it does, but nothing really happens in it. The characters are barely even characters at all. They're basically just walking flesh and meat sacks that art can, creatively disassemble, shall we say. This movie's just complete schlock. It is complete schlock, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Helped along massively, of course, by Art the Clown himself. Masterfully done there. Whoever played Art, I don't remember his name. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with actor names. I can never remember anyone's names. Anyway, whoever played Art did a incredible job. Really made that character what he is. He's like a mime clown. And if you gave that to most people, they wouldn't be able to make anything out of it. But this fucking guy managed to make Art just absolutely horrifying, terrifying, I guess. There you go. It's in the name. He's just fucked up. He's just straight up fucked up, man. This movie is just fucked up. I love it. I love how much it's just so unapologetically itself. I really respect that. And it's I think it was like an indie film or something. It was a relatively low budget film. So I respect how absurd this movie is, and I like it. That's like the top of B tier for me. It was, again, there's not really much to talk about because it doesn't have a plot. It's just straight up art kills people. That's the movie. They could just they could just rename it to that and it'd be more accurate. I want to see Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3 when it eventually comes out. That's going to be fun. This is another one that I don't know. The hits just keep on coming. How did you not know, or how did you not see this one? I don't fucking know, man. I'm sorry. I'm a fake horror fan, I guess. Again, keep in mind, I only started watching movies like a couple of years ago, so I still have a lot of classics to get to, but a lot of these are somewhat modern-ish movies, with the exception of like Alien. Scream is kind of old, but like not really. Would 90s be considered a classic? I don't know. Anyway, I mean, Night of the Living Dead is by far the oldest movie that we've got here so far. It's like 1968, I think. Yeah, very influential as well because I mean, this is basically the first proper zombie movie, right? I mean, obviously zombie movies and zombies in general had been around as a concept for quite a long time, but this is like the dawn of the modern zombie, right? Dawn of the Dead, if you will. God damn, I'm just fucking killing it today. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's a little primitive by today's standards. The zombies are a little goofy, but it gets the job done. And considering this was again pretty low budget, it's quite impressive what they were able to do. And also, this movie is like surprisingly gory for the time as well. Like more, not like shockingly gory, especially not by today's standards. It's nothing, but like it's kind of gory. Like there's zombies like feasting on guts and such, like very very visibly feasting on guts and that sort of thing. Anyway, the plot doesn't really pick up for a while. Like the first like third or so of the movie, I'd say, is pretty slow, but eventually things do start picking up quite a bit, and it gets pretty exciting. I will say that much. Like surprisingly exciting, actually. The characters are great, especially Ben. Obviously, everyone loves Ben, as do I. Yeah, this movie is just really really fun to watch through as kind of like a history piece for anybody who enjoys zombie movies or just horror movies in general, of course, but especially zombie movies. It's really fun. It's really cool, and the ending is just unbelievable. I had no idea that shit was gonna happen, man. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? I'm still fucking mad, but like in a good way, because that's what they want. That's the point. Whatever. No spoilers. It's like it's B tier. Again, the first like third of it is pretty slow, so I would feel bad putting it in A tier, but it's pretty fucking good. I had a lot of fun with it. All right, next up, man, the hits just keep on coming. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Another classic that I somehow hadn't seen, but yeah, this was really good. I'm mad at myself that I hadn't seen this until now. I've watched most of the like original like 70s and 80s slasher movies at this point. Not so much the sequels. I haven't delved into those yet, but like, I've seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween, Friday the 13th and all that. I mean, I've liked most of them. Not the original Friday the 13th. That movie fucking sucks. And I will die on that hill. That movie sucks. But I like most of them. Halloween is great. Texas Chainsaw is great. All those, they're really fun. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street is just fantastic. I'm again mad at myself that I hadn't seen this until now. I I don't really know what it was that was stopping me from watching this, but something was, and now I've seen it and I'm definitely a convert. It was very, very fun to watch. Especially, you gotta love Freddy. Freddy's just awesome. Everyone knows Freddy. I knew Freddy long before I even got into watching horror movies in general, obviously, because he's just one of those iconic characters. One of the things that I find really cool about Nightmare on Elm Street is like Freddy is genuinely a scary motherfucker. Like specifically his powers are really like scary. Like obviously I wouldn't want to fight someone like, Leatherface or Jason or Michael or anyone like that. But like at the end of the day, you can maybe get away from those guys. Maybe. Probably not, but you could. You can't run away from Freddy. He's in your fucking dreams, bro. Like you gotta sleep eventually. If you sleep, you're gonna have to face him at some point, and that's a pretty scary concept, actually. The characters were pretty fun. They're pretty standard '80s slasher fare for the most part, but the final girl in this case was awesome. Just absolute badass. I love seeing that. Really just took the fight right to Freddy's front door, It was awesome. I don't really have to say too much else about it since you've probably already seen it 8 times if you enjoy horror movies. And if you haven't, people will be telling you to. So that's a solid A tier for me. All right, next up we have got The Descent. Now, this is a movie that I was very unsure about because I'd seen footage of it and it looked very generic. It looked like just your standard like early 2000s crappy jump scare ridden horror movie when the genre was starting to get a little bit oversaturated, and it looked like one of those movies. But for some reason, just everyone kept saying this movie was fucking great. I kept hearing from all these different people that watch horror movies constantly that say like, "Oh, The Descent, yeah, that movie fucking slaps, bro. That's like one of my favorites." And I couldn't understand why, but eventually I just kind of swallowed my pride. I was like, "Whatever. I'll just watch it. If it sucks, that's fine. It's like an hour and a half or whatever. It's not a very long movie. And if it's great, cool." And I watched it and it's fucking great. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry that I doubted this movie. It certainly has flaws. It has way too many jump scares. I was definitely right about that part. But, overall, it was quite enjoyable. The characters, I kind of had trouble telling a few of them apart since they were all wearing climbing gear, and I go by hair a lot. So this is a really specific thing, probably just specific to me, but I go by hair a lot to differentiate people and characters. And I swear to God, whenever somebody makes a movie where like 2 or 3 characters have very similar hairstyles, it fucking pisses me off because it's like, I have an hour and a half to learn who these characters are with all these different things going on. But if they all have the same hair, how am I supposed to fucking tell them apart, dude? God damn it. I don't know. That's, again, very specific to me, but that was kind of annoying. Yeah, the characters were good. They were well written. My favorite character got killed off first, but it happens. Whatever. And yeah, there were plenty of creative scares. This surprisingly gory movie, like way more gory than I thought it would be. It gets absolutely ludicrous by the end. Like it goes from horror movie to like just batshit insane action thriller. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just ludicrous at the end and kind of stupid, but in a really fun way where like it somehow still makes sense. I don't know. It's just really bizarre and I like it. And the ending is absolutely soul crushing as well. So that's fun. It was good. Definitely A tier. Is that the top of A tier for me? Oh, bro. I'm gonna leave that there for now. We'll come back to that. Next up is Megan, the funny robot dance. I don't really know why I decided to watch this, to be honest. I never really had any interest in watching this. I think I just wasn't sure what to watch that night, and I looked around YouTube, or like I Googled horror movies or some shit, and I just came across this, and I was like, well, I heard people talk about it, so I guess I'll give it a try and see what happens. Turns out it's actually pretty fucking good. I didn't think it would be, but it is. It's a pretty standard horror movie, I would say. There's nothing that it does that's particularly special, exactly. It's not the most unique, I suppose, especially in terms of like evil doll movies, but it does enough of its own thing to make it enjoyable. The characters are pretty decent. There isn't really that much in the way of interesting kills or anything. It's just a decent movie. Megan was a neat character, kind of a fun slasher, but also kind of a likable and sympathetic-ish character at the same time. But not really. I guess sympathetic is probably the wrong word, but likable, definitely. I'd put it somewhere in like high B tier. I think that's good for it. Next up was House of a Thousand Corpses, and this is another movie much like Terrifier that just revels in how fucking ridiculous it is. And much like Terrifier, I respect the hell out of that. This is the first Rob Zombie movie I've ever seen. I've listened to a fair amount of his music, but I've never seen any of his movies. And this was I liked it. This is definitely not going to be for everyone, but it was quite an enjoyable Texas Chainsaw-esque romp. The plot barely even exists. It's pretty much just there as an excuse to explore this bizarre, deranged place. And I don't know. I mean, the atmosphere is very good. The practical effects are very good. I really like the setting of it. It's very ridiculous, but it's very fun. Very, very reminiscent of Texas Chainsaw. Like I said, I mean this is practically a tribute to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Realistically, there's one scene in particular that is literally just a straight up tribute to that movie. But yeah, it's great. Again, it just revels in its absurd, gory nature, and I love it for that. I respect movies that just do their own thing and don't worry about trying to please everyone, and this is definitely one of those. So that's an A tier for me. I liked House of a Thousand Corpses quite a bit. The set design, especially with some of the stuff that you see later, is really crazy, and it's got its own unique thing going on. There's these like weird vignettes, I suppose, that are just it just cuts to random people just talking about things and just doing random shit in the middle of the movie that has nothing to do with the plot at all. It's just there to like build the way that the movie is. And that's just the way the movie is. It's great. I fucking love it. A tier, definitely. Next up is Barbarian. I wasn't sure what to expect from this movie. I had watched the trailer, and I gotta say the trailer did a great job of not giving much away, because this movie goes places. It goes a lot of places, actually, and very few of those are places that you would expect it to go. This is a roller coaster of a movie. It's all over the place, and all of its different segments are pretty fun in their own right. I gotta say, I definitely liked the first couple parts of the movie the most. This is definitely one that I will not spoil, because if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it without spoilers. It's not optional. The last part kind of fell apart for me, admittedly. It was pretty tonally different from the first parts of the movie. And there were aspects of the last part that were interesting, but it definitely wasn't nearly as good as like the beginning. Oh my god, dude, the beginning of that movie is so freaking creepy, dude. Oh, it's so creepy. So good. Um, I'm kind of curious to see what I would think of Barbarian if I watched it again, because while it was a very enjoyable romp on the first go through, I'm kind of curious if I would feel the same now that I know what's going to happen. The first viewing is definitely the most important, and off of the first viewing, I would put that in A tier as well. I'm getting a little stocked into A tier here. There's a certain shall we say flashback scene, I guess, that really stuck with me. You know what I mean. It's that one. It's the fucked up one. You know. Anyway, yeah, pretty good movie. I liked it. Next up, we got The Hallow. And I had never even heard of this movie. I was just looking up like folk horror movies because I love folk horror. That's one of my favorite genres. And I came across this, and it looked like it would just tick every box for me. It's a movie about Irish folklore. It's set in a forest. It's named The Hallow, which is just a really cool sounding name. Um, I don't know. It's again, it's folk horror. It just seemed like it would be a movie for me. And I watched it and I don't think it was a movie for me, which is weird. I enjoyed it to some degree, but it didn't stick out in the way that I thought it would, which is just bizarre to me because there's so much that I really, really liked about it. Again, the atmosphere was great, and the folklore aspect of it was fantastic. A lot of parts of this movie really reminded me of the game Darkwood, which is based on, you know, a different setting and culture, but it's a pretty similar concept of like stay indoors because there's some weird shit out there in the woods. Like it's I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you've played Darkwood or kind of know what that vibe is like, and you watch The Hallow, you'll get kind of a connection there. At least I did. I don't know. I found a connection there, and I liked that well enough, but I don't know. It didn't really stick with me, which again, I can't really explain why, because it's not a bad movie by any means, like not even a little bit. The characters are good, the story is good, the atmosphere is good, it's well written, the pacing is good, it's got some well-deserved jump scares. It's very creepy, but it just didn't connect with me enough. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'd like to watch it again at some point and see if my opinion on it changes. But for right now, I think C tier is a good spot for it. We're just going to leave it right there. I respect this movie a lot, but something about it just didn't plug into the right spot in my brain, I guess. Next up, we got The Fly. So, I had heard people talk about The Fly quite a bit in this like holy trinity that people say exists of like, oh, there's the Thing, there's the Blob, and there's the Fly. Like that's the holy trinity of like 80s horror movies with like cool practical effects. And I have seen the Blob and I really liked it. And I've seen the Thing many times. It is one of my favorite movies of all time, if not my absolute favorite. Probably my favorite horror movie. It's just a good fucking movie. I love that. I love the Thing. So I kind of figured I owed it to myself to see The Fly. And yeah, it was very good. I would say of those three, obviously The Thing is my favorite. I think The Blob would probably come next because I did really like I did really like that movie as well. But The Fly, I mean, it's good. It's good in its own right. It's more, I would say this is more of like a romantic tragedy really than a horror movie. I mean, it is a horror movie. It's a body horror movie really, but it's kind of a romance movie basically. It's just a really fucked up one. Um yeah, I mean, the practical effects were fantastic. The characters, there were only pretty much three characters in the movie, but they were all pretty interesting. I liked the turnaround one of them had. I guess two of them had, technically. And yeah, the practical effects were great. This movie is fucking disgusting, by the way. I would recommend not eating very much while you're watching this because it is very gross. This is like the Thing and The Blob are pretty gross, but this movie is really fucking gross. And you could also call it a bit of a character study as well, since Dr. Brundle is definitely the main focus of this movie and his gradual descent, shall we say, is a pretty prominent aspect of it. I liked The Fly a lot. I'm definitely going to put that like right at the top of B tier, I think, is where that would land for me. That was pretty good. Next up we got Tucker and Dale versus Evil. This was fun. It's a slasher parody comedy, basically. And it's a pretty good one. I enjoyed the way it was done quite a bit. The titular characters of Tucker and Dale are both very very likable and fun to watch. And I never expected to even watch this, but again, this is just one of those random ones that I was just like, I heard people talk about it, and I was just like, all right, whatever. I guess I'll give it a watch and see if it's any good or not. And it was pretty fun. Yeah, if you enjoy horror comedies, this is definitely one to check out since it's not really that scary or anything, but it's very funny. Plus, let's just be honest here. There's some pretty wicked great kills in this movie. I'm gonna be honest. You might not think it, being the kind of movie that it is, but there's some pretty fucking wild shit in this movie. It's very very over the top, and I love it for that. That can go like at the bottom of B tier. Next up, oh boy, this is where people unsubscribe. Uh, Child's Play. For those of you who may not be familiar, this was the original movie that Chucky came from, and everyone knows Chucky. I'm gonna be real with you, Chief. This movie didn't really do it for me, and I know that's like a real hot take since people fucking love these movies. Like, people love the Chucky movies. I'm sorry. It just didn't really do it for me. I tried to watch this movie like three separate times throughout October. The reason this is so late on the list is because I had tried to watch it, and I got past the intro segment and got bored and watched something else. And then a few days later, I tried to watch it again, and I watched it for like 15 minutes and I got bored and I watched something else. And then finally, on like the day before Halloween, I finally managed to force myself to just sit down and watch it all the way through because I was like, I've got to be fucking missing something. Like, people love this movie. I'm for sure, like, it's just got a slow start. I'm just not being patient enough with it. And to some degree, that's accurate. It does have a slow start, but it picks up more as it goes on. But it just, I don't know. It just didn't do it for me. I think what it was mainly is that, to my understanding, people are like really scared of Chucky. They think he's like a really creepy character. I don't find him scary at all. Like, not even a little bit. There was not a single moment during this movie when I was like frightened of Chucky or worried for the safety of any of the characters, because I didn't really care about them either. I'm sorry. It just did not work for me. I mean, my lack of fear for Chucky is probably due to the fact that, I mean, he's a doll, you know? Like, I mean, It's like a strong doll, I guess, and he has the mind of a criminal. Like I wouldn't want let me put it this way. I wouldn't want to fight Chucky, but I'd rather fight Chucky than like any other like 80s horror movie villain. Like I ain't gonna fucking square up with Michael Myers, but I'd have a at least have a chance of kicking Chucky's ass, you know? Like I get the whole like, oh, you have to shoot him through the heart and do the thing and wait for him to be more human or whatever, but like he's a doll. He literally gets overpowered by like a child and and his mother, you know? It's like it's not I don't know. It didn't do it for me. I'm sorry. I know people love these movies, but I for me it's a D tier and I'm not trying to shit talk. I'm not trying to say that it's like an objectively bad movie. Again, this is just my opinion, and in my opinion, it's a D tier cuz it just didn't connect with me at all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I guess I shouldn't be apologizing so much, but man, it just didn't fucking work. Anyway, moving on quickly from that, the last movie I watched was Trick or Treat, and I watched that on Halloween because, I mean, it's very, very much a Halloween movie more so than a horror movie. And yeah, I mean, this was fun. People describe this as a horror anthology. All the stories are connected and kind of shot in the same way and with a similar tone and everything. So it just kind of feels like one big story. Anyway, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about Trick or Treat. It was just fun. I enjoyed it very much. I liked all of the different stories. The characters, though you didn't really have that much time to get to know them because each part was pretty short, were all very well written, very fun movie. I think that's just the best way to describe it. There's not a lot to talk about. It's just fun. I'm putting it in B tier. Yeah, right there. All right, let me see if I want to do any switching around here. I like House of a Thousand Corpses a lot actually. I'm gonna bump that up a couple. Barbarian. Oh man. I'm almost kind of tempted to put this like right down at the top of B tier cuz yeah, man, I didn't really care for the way it ended, but dude, I can't deny the fucking power of that first segment. So I think it can stay here. I like Terrifier more than The Fly, I think. Night of the Living Dead is like up here. I really liked that movie. That was very solid. Trick or Treat can go there. I think Cabin in the Woods is overall a little bit more enjoyable to me. Saw isn't better than 28 Weeks Later. Saw isn't better than Tucker and Dale. Yeah, Saw can sit down there at the bottom of B tier. Yeah, honestly, I think that list looks about right to me. Yeah, pretty top heavy list, admittedly, but again, like I said earlier, I don't really watch horror movies that I don't think I'm gonna like generally. This is my ranking of all of these. I enjoyed most of these. There were definitely a couple misses for me, but overall, yeah, these are all pretty freaking good. I would easily recommend watching pretty much anything in B, A, and S, obviously, and Hell House. I know it's in C tier, but I think Hell House is a good one to watch. I also would probably recommend The Hallow if you enjoy folk horror and that sort of thing. Honestly, I would recommend any of these except for Child's Play. No, I'm kidding. You can watch that one too. People aren't gonna like that. I'm sorry. All right, so that's my list. I hope you all enjoyed watching or listening to that or whatever the fuck. If anyone even made it this far, thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Appreciate y'all. And yeah, we'll talk to you very soon. Peace.